Welcome to the Community Advisory Group meeting. My name is Lisa Keohokalole Schauer, and I am one of the co-facilitators. I will give some space for my fellow co-facilitator to introduce himself as well.
Good afternoon, everyone. It's great to be with you. Johnell, your other co-facilitator. Looking forward to our discussion this afternoon.
And with that, we're going to go ahead and get started, and then we'll let a few other folks introduce themselves. Go ahead and advance to the next slide. For today's meeting, we have our closed captions in English and in Spanish. English closed captions are available within Zoom and YouTube. Users can follow this link to view both English and Spanish captions in a separate browser window. Next slide. How to access closed captions. At the bottom middle of your screen, you should see a menu of options. If you can't see the menu, hover your mouse over the bottom middle of the screen. Click the CC icon and a separate window with captions will appear. Next slide. Our meeting participation tips. We appreciate each of you for joining us today. We have a pretty full Zoom room. We are asking that you join by audio, either phone or computer, but not both. We encourage our panelists and CAG members to turn on your video and to keep your audio on mute when not speaking. If you experience any technical difficulties, we ask that you contact our program staff at 503-389-5675. Next slide. We have ASL interpreters that are here today in an effort to continue to center equity. They will be here in addition to closed captioning. We want to make sure that the interpreter is always visible, so please right-click their video and select Spotlight Video. For those watching on YouTube, when we screen share, you will be able to see the slideshow, closed captioning, and the ASL interpreter. You will still be able to hear different people speaking, but you may not see them. Next slide. Our public input will be scheduled today about 5:45. We'll see how the meeting goes. Sometimes we're a little bit early, sometimes we're a little bit later than that, but we always allow time and space for the public to provide input. Verbal public comment will be welcome in the Zoom webinar during the designated time with the option to turn on your web camera. Please use the link located in the meeting description on the YouTube meeting page or on the IBR CAG meeting webpage. You may also comment by phone. If you'd like to do that, please feel free to dial 1-669-900-6833. Enter the meeting ID 993-5459-6043, passcode 674942. Dial *9 to raise your hand, and after you're invited to speak, dial *6 to unmute yourself. If you enter the room early, we'll welcome you at the time that we open our public input. Our CAG members did receive some public input, and that was distributed to our CAG members in advance of this meeting. Next slide. Our CAG meeting space, we want to continue to put relationships first, keep focused on our common goal. As Sam Kim likes to say, we want to build a bridge, and that's what we're here and interested in doing together. And in doing so, the way in which we want to do that is ensure that we're noticing the power dynamics in the room. We're creating space for multiple truths and norms. We're being kind and brave. We're practicing examining racially biased systems and processes, and we're looking to each other for learning. Next slide. With that, I'm going to turn it over to our CAG co-chairs, Ed Washington and Lynn Valenter.
So Ed, if you would speak first, I'll take us through the icebreaker activity.
Okay, I think I can do that. There's a reason for it. You get journeyman wages to do what Lynn is doing, and I'm an apprentice. So I only get apprentice wages. So I just want to welcome each and every one of you to this wonderful meeting. And I think I want you all to just prepare yourself for one of the greatest icebreaker exercises you will ever experience in your life. So I'll turn that over to Lynn, and because she's good. Yeah, she's good. Go on, Lynn.
Oh, thank you. He has just set the bar so completely high that none of us will be able to leap over it. But I would ask if all of the CAG members can use the raise hand insignia at the bottom of your screen. It should be. Mine disappeared, but that way we know because as each person speaks, we're going to call on the next person. So I would ask, we're each going to share our name, our organization or affiliation, and oh good, another slide. And sorry, name, organization, affiliation, or whether you're at large, the pronouns that you use, and then what's something that has brought you joy this month. And we have a new member with us, Jay. Did I get that right? I don't see your hand up, Jay.
Yep, I'm here.
Oh, okay, Jay Clark. So Jay Clark, if you would introduce yourself with your name, affiliation, and pronouns, but also tell us a little bit about yourself because Jay's our newest member at CAG. So
Sure.
He gets to do a little bit heavier lift than the rest of us. And then when you're done, if you would just call on someone else whose hand is raised, that would be terrific. Thank you.
Okay. Hello, everyone. My name is Jay Clark, and I am the Director of Public Affairs for the Portland Metro Chamber, formerly known as the Portland Business Alliance. I've been in this role about a year. To give you my background, I was born in Oregon, raised in Kansas, came back to Oregon, University of Oregon, political science for undergrad. Then I went to Stanford and got an MBA. And I spent about 25 years, believe it or not, from age 16 to 41, working on campaigns as a consultant. I worked on about 150 different campaigns in the Portland metro area for about 100 different candidates. And then when COVID happened, I took a break from all things politics and went to Chicago, worked in the private sector, and then I returned. And now I'm here at the Portland Metro Chamber. And I have been a resident of Vancouver since 2011, with the exception of those 2 years in Chicago. And currently I live in the Orchards neighborhood of East Vancouver. And pronouns he, him. And something that brought me joy in the last month. Well, technically it was last month, not this month. I carved pumpkins for Halloween. Hadn't done that in years. A friend brought over 2 pumpkins. So I guess that's it. That's me. And I will call on Sam.
Well, thank you for that, Jay. As a fellow Washingtonian, welcome. My name is Sam Kim. I'm a supercommuter. I work in Hillsboro, Oregon, but I will be working for Washington State Employment Security Department next week. So I have switched jobs, but I'll still live in Brush Prairie, Washington, because we're mostly remote. Let's see. My pronouns are they, he, and what brought me joy is I just had a great send-off from Washington County. Oh my gosh, you would think that they couldn't run without me, but I know they were just being nice to me. So that brought me joy. Now I pick person next to me, Darcy.
Hello, everyone. Sam will have to connect offline. I must hear about this position with Employment Security. I used to work for Employment Security. We do tons and tons of work with them. They're a very close partner, and I'm dying to know more about what you're doing. So I'm Darcy Hoffman, also a Washington resident. I'm with the Workforce Southwest Washington. We're the workforce board here that serves Clark, Cowlitz, and Wahkiakum counties. Pronouns are she and her. And something that brought me joy this month, we're only 9 days into this month. So I don't know about if I've had a lot of joy yet in November, but thinking back to October, I had a couple of things, but I think the most exciting one for me is that my team got selected to run the Hood to Coast in 2024. So I'm going back and I'm really excited. And I will kick it over to Martha. She's next on my screen.
Thanks, Darcy. I'm Martha Wiley, and I also live in Vancouver, in West Vancouver. And my pronouns are she, her, and I'm a paratransit rider, and I'm all about transit. So that's my focus on this project. And the thing that brought me joy this month is it's all, two things. One is I had a birthday last week, and it was a big one with a 0 in it. So I'm excited about that. I'm now moving into my 7th decade, and I'm thrilled. And the other thing is that all the pieces are falling into place for our big trip to Australia, which is 3 weeks away. So I'm excited about that. All right, so I'm going to call on Tom Hickey next.
Thank you. Tom Hickey, I represent the North Portland neighborhoods as best I can. Hear their voices heard. It hasn't been a very joyful month, but it's one of the things that I said to somebody. It was my therapist. Hope is not passive. To be active, and you make a choice to be hopeful, and I think that's true for joyful as well. So on some levels, everything brings me joy, including the sinus surgery I just had. So actually that is a good thing. It was a little rough getting through it, but I am joyful now that my breathing passages are wide open. Zachary.
Excellent. Thank you, Tom. My name is Zachary Lauritsen, he, him pronouns. I work at Oregon Walks. We're a pedestrian advocacy organization. I don't know about you all, but fall colors bring me joy every day. I love walking and riding around town with my 2- and 4-year-old and watching them collect colors of the rainbow, of the leaves off the ground. And it's just truly a joyful time. So I'll pass to Dina.
Okay, I'm Dina Horton. I'm the Government Relations Director for Pacific Northwest Waterways Association. She, her pronouns represent the river users and multimodal users of the system. What brought me joy? Well, I'm also a Vancouver resident. So for those of you, I mean, it seems like it's the Vancouver Club on the meeting today. I live near the Voodoo Donuts and Total Wine near the mall, so I'm set. So anybody who ever wants to come over, it's probably a good place to meet. What brought me joy this month, my stepbrother and his wife went on vacation, and they let me babysit their 2 cats, which are relatives of my 2 cats. And so I had a house full, and I got a taste of what it's going to be like when I turn 70, Martha, and I get to be the crazy cat lady in the future. So I'm really excited for that. And it gave me a lot of joy to see that in my future. And I'm going to call on Ryan Webb.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Ryan Webb. I am the engineering and planning manager for the Confederated Tribes of Grand Ronde, and this project is within our ceded lands. Something that's brought me joy over the last month. Last week, I just got back from a 1.5-week trip to Florida with my family, and so we did a week on the beach, and it was 80 degrees every single day, and then we did a few days at Disney World. So that definitely brought me joy to spend time with my family. And I will pass it over to Bill.
Great, thank you very much. I'm Bill Prowse with the Oregon Association of Minority Entrepreneurs, he, him pronouns. And a couple of things I say, I'm going to jump right to the happy part. A couple of things. One, we had a great, or I say you guys, the IBR people, had a great turnout last night at the November 8th meeting with contractors and engineers and everybody else here at our facility. So we were happy to be able to have them here again. This was the second time we've had you over, and hope to see you again as we move forward for this bridge activity. But more important for me, happiness is my Ducks are winning football. So hopefully we can move on, and the end of the season will turn out the right way this time. So I'll turn it over to, is it Grina?
That's me, Irina.
Thank you.
Irina Phillips, he, she, her pronouns. And I represent East European Coalition. So these are immigrants and refugees from Eastern Europe. Ukraine, Russia, Belarus, former USSR. And also we cover Polish, Czech, Slovak, and Yugoslavian folks. And what brought me joy, my nephew just announced that he is going to be married in January. So I am planning a trip, and the trip will be a hop to Chicago first, and then to Istanbul, and then to Tbilisi. So this is going to be a cool trip. Yep. And I'm selecting Jerina.
Hi, I'm Jerina Hatch. I'm with Community in Motion. She, her pronouns, and I also happen to live over in, Washington, so joining that club. I think the thing that brought me the most joy so far this month would be yesterday when I had a client over the phone tell me they loved me. I know it was a total accident, but I loved it. It was just one of those moments. I think I'm going to select Michaela.
Great. Hi, everyone. I'm Michaela Williams. I'm an at-large community member representing the Washington side of the bridge. My pronouns are she, hers, and something that brought me joy this month was like Martha. I also had a birthday, and I threw a little birthday party where I had a bunch of friends and family come to town. So that was really, really nice to see everybody and have them all together. Sorry, let me go ahead and select Julie.
Okay. Hi, my name is Julie Doumbia. I'm also an at-large community member in the Northeast Portland neighborhoods. And something that brought me joy. So it's very, very close. I think it's been bringing me joy all month so far. I'm heading to the coast this coming week. So I am very, very excited to kind of get out of town for a little bit. There's been a lot of rain, and just really looking forward to switching things up a little bit. Okay, and I am going to pick, a lot of hands down right now.
I'll just help out Jana Jarvis.
Jana, yes.
Okay.
Good afternoon, Jana Jarvis, President and CEO of the Oregon Trucking Association. Obviously, I live on the Oregon side of the bridge. And I had the pleasure, my husband and I had the pleasure of having our pictures taken with our two grandchildren this last Saturday. And it was quite an experience. They're 1 and 4. So it was a morning, I'll tell you that. And I know Sherry doesn't have her hand up, but she is a member, so I should call on you, Sherry.
All right. Thanks, Jenna. I didn't raise my hand because I wasn't sure I understood the assignment since I was a little bit late. So apologies for that. Sherry Call, President and CEO of the Washington Trucking Association here on the Washington side. So we have both sides covered as far as freight goes by road. And joy is finding out about family Christmas plans that involve everybody being able to stay in one house for a few days. And I look forward to that in mid-December. So good to see you all.
That's great. Thank you very much. And I'm now going to go to the agenda item where whoever was driving before was trying to help me out, but I ignored it. So if we could put the agenda slide up on the screen, we'll cover that briefly before we go to our one of our highlights, which is Greg's comment. But just so you know how today will be rolling out, we're starting off with welcome updates as delineated here. We're 2/3 of the way through, and then we'll be going to a program update from our administrator, Greg Johnson. Then Angela's going to walk us through some information about the draft SEIS, the process information summary, and talk briefly about public comment. And then we're really looking for CAG to dig in when we get to the public comment section. This is not public comment like we have every time that Lisa was talking about at the beginning and we received an email. This is framing the public comment period for the feedback on the draft SEIS. And so this is where we'll be reaching out to the general public, but we're hoping that CAG will have some insight or recommendations that will help us do that as effectively as possible. Then we'll close out with public comment, if any, and the meeting. I think I got a delay here. So with that, I'd like to introduce Greg Johnson, the program administrator, to provide us with our perennial favorite, the program update. Greg?
Thank you, Lynn. Good afternoon, everybody. It's once again always a pleasure to be here at the CAG meetings. These are one of the highlights of the month for me. So I want to quickly run through some of the things that the program is doing and get everyone up to speed, but also want to welcome Jay Clark to the CAG. Jay, we are reaching out to a number of folks to represent the community, and the business community is an important part of that outreach. So welcome to the team.
Thank you.
Let's go to the next slide. So one of the more important things that we do to get people to understand the complexity of this project is give program tours and give presentations. So last month we had a advisory group tour that was well attended, where we took folks through the program area to get an understanding of some of the challenges that we face. But yesterday we had the Oregon Transportation Commission. They were in town. Actually, they had their commission meeting in Portland. And so they had their commission meeting today. So yesterday they came and took a tour of the program area to get that understanding. And we received such positive comments from them that they did not fully realize some of the challenges of geography and space that are created by trying to fit this program into this corridor. So it was a great meeting, but once again, it's one of the more enlightening things that we do is get folks out there, and you can see some of the pictures. We had Representative Marie Glusenkamp Perez came, and if you look close enough, in her hand is a gob of grease that's used to grease the cables for the bridge. So, but we do presentations, and if there are any presentations that you folks need us to do, we are more than happy to get out there. So we talked to the Vancouver Transportation and Mobility Commission, the Association of General Contractors, the Conference of Minority Transportation Officials, the Pacific Northwest Waterways Association, who we have a member represented on CAG. The neighborhood associations, we are having a continual conversation with them, and Tom represents Bridgeton. We've also been at High Noon and East Columbia neighborhood. So that is, once again, our team is out, all times of the day and night, weekends, making these presentations to make sure folks are informed on how they can be involved, how they can make their voices heard. We also presented to the Portland Historic Landmarks and Design Committee. And this is going to be tremendously important for how some of our designs are going to be integrated into the community. So this is tremendously important stuff. So next slide, please. So we just had a great shout out from Awami about our contractor meet and greet that we had last night. This is a picture from that meeting, and we had, I think we were over 50 or 60 folks who were in attendance. And once again, the purpose of this was to meet with disadvantaged business enterprises, DBEs, small businesses, as well as some prime contractors to continue the conversation about how we are planning on constructing this project, what the package sizes will look like, as well as what type of delivery method we will be using. So we had a great conversation to get folks up to speed. And one of the things that I tell folks is that you can't find your spot at the table if you don't know where the table is and when the table is being convened. So these meetings are important for area businesses to understand that. We will be having more of those. We will be going up to Tacoma to meet with the Tabor 500, which convenes small businesses and minority-owned businesses in the Tacoma, Seattle area. So these are important meetings. Last week, we had a meeting with our bi-state legislative committee, and we are going to have 3 meetings this fall. So that was the first of 3. We will be having one on November 28th, as well as December 15th. And these meetings are important as to keep that bi-state legislative committee informed of all our activities and actions that we are working on, and to give them an opportunity to ask questions and clarifications of all the things we're working on. They are tremendously interested in our advisory committees, this committee, the Equity Advisory Committee, as well as the new Community Benefits Advisory Group. So these are important meetings. And so if you have any desire to watch them, you can go to our IBR website and take a look and watch the entire meetings. So important stuff. Some of the other things that we're working on, we have a sub-consultant that is working on how we will get this built. They're looking at the staging. They're looking at, once again, package sizing, delivery methods, to start informing us of how we can most effectively deliver this. As many of you already know, we are not looking to put one big $6 billion contract out for one contractor. We are looking at having upwards of 20 different contracts. So small, medium, and large size businesses can see themselves in any of those contracts. So we're hoping to have a report which we will bring to this group sometime in January or February, once we get that finalized and through some of the approval processes. But we'll be coming back to you to share with you that information of how we're going to approach building this thing, what packages, and the timing of those packages. So those are just some of the things that are going on with the program, but I will endeavor to answer any questions that you may have. So I am open to for your questions.
Quiet group. Oh, Dina.
So I always have to ask kind of the status of where we're at in terms of permitting and dealing with some of the regulatory challenges for this project.
Dina, it's always a great and timely question. So we are currently, we have two paths that we are looking at for the Coast Guard permit, which is one of the most important permits that we will need to get this project built. So we are working with the impacted river users that have had a historical need for more than 116 feet proposed. So we are working with them to see if we can satisfy their needs. As you may know, during the last project, we were able to meet with those folks and reach agreement on a 116-foot fixed span. But we also are taking a second path based on Coast Guard comments and their preliminary navigation finding. So we have included a movable span in all of our preliminary design work, and you'll hear a little bit more about that when Angela Finley from our team presents on where we're at on the draft supplemental. So we are still working with those folks as well as the U.S. Army Corps, because we will need permits from them to modify shipping channels, and also we'll have impacts on the levees on the south side of the river that we will need permits from the Army Corps to modify. So all of those things are moving along. We are currently still on schedule. We don't need the Coast Guard permit until early to mid 2026, but we are planning to have that secured before that time and not have that become a critical path item for us. But the conversations are going on where those conversations with the impacted businesses are covered under a non-disclosure agreement. I can say that we're talking to them, and I can't disclose the nature of those conversations, but I think they are moving along in a fruitful way, and we are comfortable that we can reach agreement with those folks. So Dina, did that answer your question?
Yes, thank you very much.
All right,
Okay, Greg, now you've got, yeah.
Oh, go ahead.
No, go ahead, Greg, go.
Oh, I was gonna say I saw Zachary's hand up next, so Zachary.
Thanks, Greg. Good to see you. And it's nice to see some folks tonight after meeting some of you in person at the tour. So I appreciated that opportunity to see some real life people. So we're not just virtual, avatars on a screen. And thanks for putting on the tour, Greg, and to your team as well. One of the things that really struck me when we were on the tour was standing on Hayden Island and on Vancouver side about the size of the bridge vis-a-vis real, like again, kind of real life, like seeing it. And the question was asked about when some of those, like, I think they're virtual reality is, maybe you can correct me if I'm wrong, like virtual reality simulation, so people can like see what the bridge actually would look like in terms of size and scope, width, height, those kind of things. Can you give an update on when those will be available for us to experience?
So we're looking at two different things. Some will be a virtual reality drive-through of some of the areas, but we will also have some more in-depth 3D renderings that will give more scope on the landing areas of the bridge itself as it lands on Hayden Island and as it touches down in Vancouver. So the team is fiercely working on those to meet the commitments that I put out there for them. So we're hoping to start seeing some of that come in late December, early January, but have all of those things available before we release the draft supplemental document. So we will be bringing those to this group for you to see and comment on as soon as we get them and get them through the approval processes. But once again, folks are interested in how tall will this bridge be and what impact is it going to have on the skyline and sight lines of both Hayden Island and Vancouver. So we know it's going to be a bigger bridge. It's going to be taller. So hopefully we'll be able to get those representations, those graphical representations out to folks maybe starting late next month or into January, but definitely before we release the draft supplemental.
So Greg, I just note that on our future look at agenda, January 11th says enigmatically design videos. So I think we can kind of hope that maybe that's what we're looking for. But as you note, it may or may not be possible. I did have a question though. With the bi-state ledge, I imagine much of what is done is the team reporting activities and choices and things, but did they have any directives for you that you can share rather than have us watch the whole video to learn that information?
They had several areas of concern. Number one was regarding the schedule. Are we still on schedule? We know that we have pushed the draft supplemental. Originally, it was going to be released in December, but some of our reviews and the back and forth with our federal partners are pushing that into the first quarter of 2024. So that was one of their primary concerns. They were very interested in are we preparing appropriately the community on each side to give input to the draft supplemental. So we went through some of the community engagement and some of the innovative things that we're doing. You guys have heard about our micro grants that we have given to some community-based organizations to amplify our messaging and reach into the community to get participation. So they were very interested in that. They were also interested in where we were at with our grant applications and when we were going to hear back. So we are, for this group, we submitted our mega grant application back in September. And we are now hearing some feedback. We've had some conversations with the USDOT who had questions on our application. So we have answered those. So we are hoping to hear back on that grant, which was a $600 million grant. We're hoping to hear back on that by the end of January. We also are in the process of putting together our grant application for the BIP grant, which is the Bridge Improvement Program grant. And we're going to be asking for $1.2 billion. That's the large grant. That's the largest grant we will be asking for from our federal government. So we are putting that grant together. We just this afternoon had what we call a page turn, where our team, 40 members of our team, sat and reviewed what has been written so far for that grant. And if you haven't received a request to put in letters of support, get ready, put in letters of support. We need everyone putting their shoulder to the wheel to get us over the finish line on these grant applications. And while I'm on that topic, the third grant application is of a different nature. So these first two are like exams. You get them, you go and you write answers and you submit them, and they score based on what you have written and what you have submitted. The third grant is a different grant. That's our Federal Transit Administration grant. They call it Capital Improvement Grant. And that is more of a take-home open book exam where they work with you throughout and you get to go into different phases. Currently, we were granted the ability to go into the project development phase. That happened in early October. That's an important step in the process. So we have 2 years now to satisfy all of the needs of that process, and they will allow us to go into the engineering phase of it. And once we complete the engineering phase, we go into what's called a full funding grant agreement process. And we're going to be asking for between 900 million and 1.1 billion from the Federal Transit Administration. So these are important grants. And once again, we have all of the local funds in place. And it's now to fill the rest of the funding picture with these federal grant opportunities. So those were the important things we conveyed to the Bi-State Legislative Committee. So, but we want you to tune in and watch those things anyway, Lynn. If you get sleepy and tired at night, they can help you.
We can send out the link to that as well. There are potential other opportunities to tune into the Bi-State perhaps through the end of this year. So I want to just note our time. It's about 4:45. We've got 2 pretty significant opportunities for both information sharing and then discussion with the CAG. So Martha, your hand is raised for a question for Greg, and then we'll move into Angela's topic. Martha?
Yeah, I was interested to hear you talk about a movable section of the bridge. I thought that was one of the things we were trying to avoid. So is that something that you talked about in person on our last at the field trip? Because I haven't heard about that. I was not there.
Okay, we have it was this past February where our federal partners asked us to include a movable span option in the bridge. It's not a separate alternative. It is what we call a design option. So when they ask, and we're asking them for a couple $2 billion, we snapped off a smart salute and said, yes, we will do this. So we are looking at the impacts of a movable span. It is not the preferred alternative that or option that we have heard from anyone, except a very small group of folks. But the partners, the transportation partners don't want to see it. Our federal highway administration does not want to see it, because once again, there's only 9 movable spans on the interstate in the entire US. And this is one of them that they would like to get off the list. But also the Federal Transit Administration doesn't want to see it because once again, it slows down light rail as you have to slow down to go over a movable span. So, but we're working to make sure that we have that alternative on the table if we can't reach agreement with the impacted business users. All right, thank you for the questions.
Okay. Those were good questions. All right, we're going to head into the next section, which is the draft SEIS. And we have really been working together with the technical team to try and make sure that we're providing enough context and technical information around the process, as well as allow enough time for discussion with the community advisory group. And so you have seen our environmental lead at these CAG meetings before, but it's been a little bit, and Angela has been extremely busy. And so she's going to tell us a little bit about our next big milestone, and we'll roll then into an opportunity for CAG members to provide input. So with that, Angela, welcome to the CAG.
Thank you, Lisa. I'm happy to be here. It has been a few meetings since I had the pleasure. You guys are always a fun group to be with. So I am going to dive into the pretty deep into the draft supplemental environmental impact statement to help you get an overview of what it is, how it fits into making a decision on a preferred alternative, and just how we use it and what the information is in that document. So if we go to the next slide, please. I guess just an overview before we dive in, and these slides are pretty dense with text, so I'll try to not go too fast, but I also don't want to bore you with technical information. For those of you who've been with the CAG since its inception, you know that we early on we talked about the purpose and need being a foundational element of the National Environmental Policy Act. And so I just wanted to kind of bring that back into focus. The National Environmental Policy Act, which we call NEPA, really there's kind of some core elements to it. It's really first understanding the problems that are out there, you know, why we're needing to do something. So we have a problem statement, which is our purpose and need. What are the needs that need to be addressed? We then develop alternatives as some potential solutions to address those problems. We evaluate those alternatives in terms of their impacts to the community, to the environment, and I'll share a little bit more specifically what that type of analysis looks like. And so through that evaluation, we're then able to inform the decision making and ultimately select a preferred alternative to advance to future design and construction. So that's kind of the really big picture. And as we've stated before, we are preparing a supplemental environmental impact statement because the work that was done over 10 years ago with the I-5 Columbia River Crossing project is the beginning, and we are supplementing the work that was done before, looking at the changes that have happened, both in terms of the physical environment. It's not all the same businesses around, the demographics of the people living in and around the I-5 corridor have changed. And so we're supplementing that previous work to catch up with all the different changes. So we have previously adopted the problem statement from the CRC program because none of those needs, there's about 6 of them, there's still issues out there today, whether it's congestion, connection of public transit, active transportation, seismic resiliency, freight, and safety. So that's our problem statement. In the supplemental environmental impact statement, we have 2 alternatives. One is what we call our modified LPA. That's our modified locally preferred alternative. And then we are required to compare it to what we call a no-build alternative. And that's the alternative that if we do nothing, you know, what happens in the long term? And compare that to if we make improvements, how does that compare to doing nothing? So the modified LPA that is evaluated in the supplemental EIS is based on conceptual design. It's not final design, but it does identify the key components that we're evaluating, that we're studying, that we're proposing for the extent of the I-5 corridor from about North Victory Boulevard in the south up to SR 500 in the north. We will be analyzing the modified LPA and the no-build alternative and publishing that analysis in the draft supplemental EIS. We will make all of that analysis, the findings of the analysis, available for public review and for comment. And we'll get into the comment later on in the discussion, as Lisa had mentioned and Lynn had mentioned. It's really important to know that we are not making any decisions on what the preferred alternative is at this time. Those decisions come or will be made after the public comment period is complete and the program and our respective agencies are able to understand the comments, determine if there are revisions that need to be made to the locally preferred alternative before it becomes the official preferred alternative. So we will go through some refinements, adjusted to respond to those public comments, agency comments. In the meantime, the program is doing additional technical work in terms of refining the design and also looking at ways to minimize impacts. And so after all that is done, after the public comment occurs and is concluded, then we will move into a final supplemental EIS and ultimately a record of decision. That is the decision of selecting an alternative to move forward to design and construction. And so that's, just want to give you the bigger picture of what the supplemental EIS process is like. And so we'll go to the next slide to dive in a little bit deeper on the two alternatives that we are studying. As I mentioned, there's the modified locally preferred alternative and a no-build alternative. The modified LPA, again, is compared to the no-build. What if we do have improvements to what if we don't, to understand the differences, impacts, also benefits. We have several locations on the corridor where we have some different options. So those are kind of constrained to, like I said, different locations. And in some respect, they basically provide what we call bookends. So that, for example, we have one design option in downtown Vancouver, where currently right there at the SR14 interchange with I-5, right, as you are approaching the bridge to cross it when you're going southbound, there are some ramps to C Street, which can make a nice connection to downtown Vancouver. But it does complicate the congestion on I-5 at that location. And so we're looking at what if you continue to have those connections at C Street? And what if you don't? What if you take those away so that you maybe can reduce some congestion there and also you know, maybe be able to do a little bit more in connecting local roadways in the city at that location. So there's two ramps, an off ramp to C Street and one on ramp to C Street. And so looking at those bookends, you could say, well, one bookend is having no ramps. The other bookend is having both of the two ramps. We could end up someplace in the middle with only maybe having one of the two ramps there. So that option is providing us the opportunity to look at the impacts, and then from that analysis, we will eventually be able to make a selection on the extent of ramps. And over here on the right-hand side of the slide, I've kind of listed some of our design options. There are 3 different bridge configurations. There are 2 different auxiliary lane options. There is a little bit of an alignment option of I-5 in downtown Vancouver, the C Street ramps that I mentioned, and some options for potential park and ride locations at the waterfront and Evergreen transit stations. So that's kind of the composition of what the modified LPA is. I'm not going to go into a lot of the detail in the design. I think we have that slated for a future meeting. The no build alternative, again, as I mentioned, it's really what if nothing is done? What happens over time to I-5, to the connecting roadways, the demand for public transit, the demand for sidewalks, and other active transportation facilities. So it's kind of a baseline comparison that we're looking at in the supplemental EIS. I will mention that we are looking at a future condition of these two alternatives. So we're really looking at what are the benefits and impacts in the future. This is what we call our design horizon. So we're looking at 2045 as our future condition. So the no build is not today. It is today with the projected growth in terms of population and jobs between now and 2045. So we're really trying to look at a future condition. We'll go to the next slide, please. All right, so those are the two alternatives and just kind of an understanding of what they comprise and how we compare them. On this slide, I know it's a lot of text. This is a quick and dirty table of contents of the draft supplemental EIS. We have kind of these standard chapters with a summary so that if you don't feel like reading a few hundred pages of text and tables and graphics, we have a shorter version that summarizes the information in the environmental impact statement. So that will be provided as well as the full document. There's some front matter information, you know, all the good stuff with acronyms and tables of contents and that type of information. The first meaty chapter, as I mentioned, is our purpose and need statement, clarifying what the program is, what are the problems we're trying to address with this action that Federal Highways and Federal Transit Administrations are undertaking. Chapter 2 is a thorough description of the two alternatives that we will be evaluating, as well as a summary of the process that we went through over the last couple of years to identify those two alternatives. Chapter 3 is a very beefy chapter, for lack of a better word. This is where we really get into the nuts and bolts of the environmental impact analysis. And as you can see here, right now we have 22 subsections of chapter 3. And these are broken down into specific disciplines. Some of them are community resources, some of them are operational issues like transportation. We have natural resources. This is where we really get into looking at, for example, what are the parks and recreational facilities that we have in the study area, and how does the modified LPA impact or avoid those parks and trails and other facilities? What is the mitigation if we do have some adverse impacts? This is the chapter that will go through each resource area and provide that analysis. Chapter 4 is a financial analysis summary, understanding the cost, our revenue sources that we're looking at, and Greg spoke to some of those earlier. And then chapter 5 is what we call our section 4F evaluation. This is a specific document that is prepared to satisfy a different regulatory regulation, which is the U.S. Department of Transportation Act, where we are specifically looking at parks, historic properties, refuges, wildlife, waterfowl refuges, if we had them in our project area, which we don't. But there is a separate set of steps that we need to go through to satisfy section 4F of that regulation. And so that chapter is designated to provide that analysis. And of course, we have quite a few appendices All of this technical analysis is really a summary in the EIS of more deeper and robust technical analyses. And in Appendix H, we list all of those technical reports that are the foundation of the Chapter 3 sections, which all of this is what we're working on right now and will be provided to the public when the draft supplemental EIS is published. All right. I will try and move a little bit more quickly because I want to make sure that we have time to have some discussion. If we move to the next slide, please. This is just a graphic representation of the Interstate Bridge Replacement Program. Down here in kind of the lower left is the Victory Boulevard interchange, the southern portion of our study area. And then in the upper right, you'll see the I-5 SR 500. And what you see here, this is just a big picture view of some of the elements. So starting from on the Portland side, looking at some light rail facilities, potentially an expo center, reconfiguring the Marine Drive interchange. We're looking at bridges, additional bridges, structures over North Portland Harbor, Hayden Island, some light rail improvements, extending light rail up there with the station. Again, reconfiguring that interchange. When you get to the crossing of the Columbia River, the main stem of the river, you'll see we have the bridges, and we have 3 options there. Waterfront station, when you come down into Vancouver, we have 3 park and ride options. I mentioned the C Street ramps. This is the location, and so forth. Evergreen Station is the northern terminus of extending the Yellow Line light rail max. Mill Plain, Fourth Plain, and SR 500, some smaller levels of improvements at those 3 interchanges. When we were working on this presentation, we realized that it's probably time to bring the design team back to the CAG to really dive into each of these improvements and options. So I think that will be slated for a future meeting. But I just wanted to give kind of big picture study. This is the full alternative, the build alternative or the modified LPA that we are evaluating. Wetlands, air quality, neighborhoods, all 22 sections of different resources for all the improvements along this full corridor. All right. And next slide, in terms of exactly what are we evaluating for each of those environmental community resource areas, we are looking at understanding if there are impacts, if there are benefits. We use quantitative and qualitative analysis to understand that. Sometimes it's looking at a design footprint and seeing how it overlays on the different neighborhoods, delineated wetlands. We are looking at a multitude of different types of impacts or effects. We look at long-term permanent impacts. We look at short-term impacts that are related to construction. There's a term that we look at, indirect effects, which are things that maybe aren't happening right there where the construction and the permanent infrastructure is being built, but happen downstream in the river, farther in distance, or maybe later in time, such as, what does this, what do these improvements do for, future population changes that may happen in the neighborhoods with introducing new infrastructure. And then we also look at what we call cumulative effects, which is looking not just at what happens with this program, but combining what happens with this program in terms of other projects that have happened in the past or in the future, or that are being built at the same time as the interstate bridge. So we look at it from a lot of different angles. And along with that, when there are adverse impacts that we are unable to avoid or minimize, that's when we start looking at, okay, how do we mitigate some of these impacts? Because there's no way we can build a massive project like this without having some impacts, unfortunately. So there are some things that we are, as a program, we are required to do by regulations or stipulations in permits that we obtained. We always apply best management practices. And then, as I list here at the very bottom, in addition, for the unique elements that aren't covered by regulations and best management practices, we will be tailoring project-specific mitigation. Let's move ahead. So you might be wondering, what is the CAG's role with the supplemental environmental impact statement? So for the draft supplemental EIS, we'll be taking the next few meetings to continue to provide information to you so you understand what the draft supplemental EIS is, what it contains, because we know that you are a point of contact for the agencies, community groups that you represent. And so we want to arm you with the information about it so that you can relay that information and answer questions to your constituents. When we get closer to the comment period that's associated with the public review of the draft supplemental EIS, which we're anticipating being a 60-day comment period, we're going to be looking for you to help us get the word out, encourage people to come and join us or review online the information that we have, and provide comments of areas that you support, or maybe you feel that we missed something, or that there's some revisions that we can make to better address what we're trying to accomplish here. And that public comment is extremely valuable because ultimately it becomes really important to helping provide the information about the final decision and the final solution that we will be analyzing in the final supplemental EIS. Next slide, please. Lisa, how am I doing on time? Am I going too long?
You're doing pretty good, but
all right, keep it
you
going.
only have a couple more slides until discussion.
Okay, yeah, let's keep going to the next slide, please. Oh, one more. Oh, yeah, sorry, I was confused. You were already there with me. So we're looking, I think Greg mentioned this or earlier, we're looking at releasing the draft SEIS in early 2024. Lots of outreach leading up to that to educate folks about how it's going to be organized in the document, understanding what the modified LPA is. And then during the comment period, there will be multiple opportunities to meet with the project team to review the document and provide information. And then after that comment period closes, we'll be working toward the final EIS. That should be actually the final supplemental EIS and record of decision for the remainder of 2024 and into early 2025. Next slide. And so upcoming decisions that will need to be made for the final supplemental EIS, in addition to the public comments, what we listed here are some of the design options where we have some choices that we need to make on those design options. We have 3 bridge configurations that are listed here, a double deck and a single level fixed span bridge, as well as a single level with that movable span over the primary navigation channel. And I think I mentioned these auxiliary lanes, C Street on and off ramps, the alignment of I-5 in downtown Vancouver, and park and ride facilities. Those decisions will not be made until after we get public comment. I think the next slide is just throwing out some questions here that we'd love to get your feedback on. Is as we are getting closer to that public comment period, how can we help you? How can we help the community prepare for the publication of the draft supplemental EIS? And also trying to understand, what is most important for the public to understand about the draft SEIS. So open it up for questions or any thoughts on some of these questions that we posed.
Sam.
So,
Oh, no.
Can you hear me okay?
Yes. Yep.
Okay. Well, thank you so much. This is really useful information. So when we talk about draft supplemental environmental impact statement, there's going to be 60 days public comment period, and then we'll start working on the final SEIS. I'm just wondering, gosh, that just seems like a tight timeline. Will the community advisory group have a chance to kind of like preview and be able to explain ourselves with our constituencies and so forth, or will we be subject to the same 60-day period like everybody else?
Yes, I mean, we will be working to get the word out on what the modified LPA is, so that people can see maps and understand the design options, but the actual impact analysis, analysis about transportation operations and community impacts, that'll be available when the EIS is released for public review. We really encourage folks to come to meetings where we'll be doing presentations. We'll also be doing a lot of outreach, and I'm sure we'll have a lot of information on our website to provide information to really help folks understand everything that is evaluated in the EIS, to help inform folks so they can provide comment on the document.
I appreciate that. My request is that we don't feel like the 60 days is the only opportunity we have to absorb and communicate and comment. So anything you can do upfront and give us a longer runway would be appreciated. Thank you.
Thank you, Sam.
We'll go to Dina, then Martha, and then Tom.
Thank you. Thanks, Angela. Great presentation. I'm just curious if it's possible, when you have that slide that shows all of the different pieces and things that are being considered, and is it possible to also have a map that kind of shows what it looks like, what you're anticipating changing or doing from the river perspective? So like how and where the channel might be realigned for the different options, so that folks in our constituency actually kind of understand from what it looks like below the bridge, not just, what's happening over and on the bridge.
Yes, absolutely. We will have, looking, I think a lot of our shops graphics show that view kind of as you're approaching the bridge coming down the river, the profile view, not necessarily just looking down on a plan sheet, because that's not really helpful from a river user standpoint. Yes, we are in the process right now of having our cooperating agencies review the documents, two of which the Corps of Engineers and the U.S. Coast Guard. Navigation is obviously a key element that they are responsible for, and so we are providing quite a bit of information for the navigation community. And so we'll be showing what it means in terms of the heights of the bridges with the different configurations, as well as the change in the pier locations. There'll be fewer piers in the river in the future compared to what there is today. And so that promotes wider spacing, which is usually preferred by many of the mariners sailing under the bridge that have a little bit wider berth. Great, thank you.
Bertha, then Tom.
Yeah, I have a couple of things. One is in addressing Sam's comment about giving us extra time. Is it possible for us to look at the technical reports before they are open to the public for the draft SEIS review? Because that might help us look at some of this stuff before. I mean, I know you'll be working on with those technical reports to summarize them and put them into the draft SEIS, but the technical reports themselves, I assume, would be finished before the draft EIS is open for public review.
They are, however, as we go through various reviews with our draft SEIS, we have prepared actually 2 drafts of the document so far. There are 3 different reviews that we go through: a technical review, which we've done, a second review with our other federal agency partners to make sure that when they issue permits or take actions of their own, that they can use our NEPA document. And so they are reviewing that information now to make sure the NEPA, the supplemental EIS will satisfy their needs. And oftentimes any changes that we need to make as we go through these reviews correspond to some minor changes, usually not the technical findings, but just it's a consistency effort that we need to go through to make sure that the SEIS summary of the technical work stays consistent with the technical report and vice versa. And then we have another set of reviews to make sure that the document is legally adequate, sufficient. And so everything is not final. The technical reports and the EIS are not final until it goes through all of those reviews and the signatory agencies sign off on their approval. So unfortunately, we are not able to release that information. The soonest we can get it out is when we get it out for the public review. But that doesn't mean that we can't take time in some of the upcoming meetings to really expedite your understanding of what's in the document, what are the impacts and findings and mitigation, and how they vary between the modified LPA and the no build.
Okay, thank you. I'm interested in how you will be addressing climate change. I assume, I mean, you had that section called climate, and I assume that climate will include climate change analysis.
Yes, it is looking at climate change, it's looking at resiliency. We have greenhouse gas emissions. We are looking at materials during construction and construction techniques to really look at a full gamut of climate related issues. And so that's a new section that wasn't in the prior environmental impact statement that was done back in the 2000s. So we have added that, as well as have a new section on equity, which wasn't in the document previously either. So yes, we are definitely trying to provide information about climate and equity in the environmental impact statement.
And when you say resiliency, does that mean how the project will be affected by climate change? Because some of the things you talked about were how the project will affect climate change, but I'm interested in the opposite.
Yes, the opposite in terms of, like, for example, if there are larger storms that happen over the winter where there's higher flows of water. How do we build a bridge? How do we design a bridge to withstand maybe higher loads of current on them? Looking at increased water levels, sea level rise, that type of thing.
Okay, thank you. That's what I wanted to know. And then my last question has to do with the visual impact. We sort of talked about, somebody else brought up earlier something about visual simulations of the bridge and when those might be available. Will those be available prior to the release of the draft SEIS?
Greg spoke about the virtual reality work, which is earlier than the EIS release. We also have some fixed point visual simulations that will be included in our visual impact analysis. You know, what does it look like today? What would it look like in the future with a double deck bridge? How does that change the view from certain what we call key viewing areas? And so that is the crux of some of our visual impact analysis that will be in the supplemental EIS document.
Are you planning to have, with regard to visual impact analysis, any kind of on the ground, what am I trying to say here? Like the bridge is going to be much higher than it is now. Have you thought about attaching, say, a very visible red balloon with the height that goes up to the top of the proposed bridge so that people who drive past it or walk along the waterfront or wherever can actually see where the top of the bridge might be? Or are you planning to have everything be like on paper or on a screen?
That's a really great question, Martha. I don't think we've kind of got quite that far. We definitely will have information on paper, on the screen, and there are some good reference points. For example, the top of the current bridge, not the lift span towers, but the truss superstructure. Some of those are good reference points to understand where the roadway of the new bridge would be, and we will provide that information in the EIS. Other types of markers can take that back to the team. Of course, it couldn't be something that would be too distracting while you're driving on the bridge, because most of us drive on the bridge, just try and make sure we stay in our lane. But I like that idea. So that's a great question and suggestion.
Thank you.
Thank you, Martha.
I do want to go back
go ahead, Greg.
before we leave Martha's question on resiliency and what we're doing in the future. Some of the things that we are also looking at is the roadside plantings. We're looking at planting potentially native species that can survive in a freeway right of way. We're looking at overplanting of trees so we can create more shade in the area of the bridge and in the interchanges. So a number of different things that are dealing with climate. And as I think I've spoken to this group before, we are looking at having an enclosed drainage system. Right now, all the storm runoff from the bridge goes directly into the river, carrying any oil or debris that's on that roadway, including microfibers from tires, which we know impact salmon populations. So there are a number of good things that will be part of the draft supplemental that address climate and environment.
Thank you.
And we'll go to Tom and Dina, and just want to note that we do have one more topic. We don't want to rush this, and so if we need to push some of the other agenda item off to our next month's meeting, we'll do that. So Tom and Dina.
Okay, so my concern is this massive data dump that's going to happen on day one. and all of the stakeholders will be rushing around trying to analyze this data over the first month or so, leaving us only 30 days, let's say, left to have question and answers and stuff and have discussions. So in response to the question, how can you kind of get ahead of that? Have you identified and will you identify and pre-schedule conversations with the key stakeholders so that there is no sort of delay in moving the conversation forward? Because I'm concerned that by the time we work our way through all of the data and decide what our stakeholder positions are, we've sort of spent half of the period before there's even a chance to have a conversation.
I totally hear you, Tom. And this might be a good time for me to phone a friend. Kimberly Webb is here and is going to be much more aware of some of the work that we're going to do to do some pre-work, as well as when that public comment period opens. So Kimberly, if you're able to maybe address some of those questions that Tom has, that'd be great.
Hello, everybody. I'm Kimberly Webb, the communications lead on the Interstate Bridge Replacement Program. And thank you for the question, Tom. This is something our communications team has been pondering over the last several months, and we have developed a plan that will help educate and inform people on what is being studied, such as maybe the types of data that individuals will get to see once this SEIS is released. However, we will not be revealing the results of the data. And later in our presentation today, or if we can get to it today, we will have more details on our approach to do just that.
Okay, but my recommendation is that you get ahead of the curve and pre-schedule meetings with these stakeholders so that there's not a long delay between the release of the data and the beginning of conversations.
Noted. Thank you.
Dina?
Thank you. I just wanted to circle back to one more thing related to resilience for Martha, since I may have missed someone mentioning it, but I thought one of the major points of trying to create resilience for the bridge was dealing with the seismic issues and the potential for a Cascadia quake, and trying to make our infrastructure more resilient to natural disasters or climate change or storm surges and other things that could potentially be encountered looking ahead into the future. So while we've been lucky so far to not have a significant enough earthquake to cause some of that liquefaction, we'd kind of like to not see that in the future. And so that was one of the things I thought was one of the main reasons we were trying to replace this bridge, was to help deal with some of the seismic resiliency parts of the bridge too.
Absolutely. That is one of our 6 foundational problem statements, or one of our 6 needs, is to improve the seismic resiliency, because it is a little difficult out there right now if that big one was to hit. And so anyone who happens to be driving over the bridge this week, you might see some barges and construction equipment. It's actually drilling equipment. We are out there taking soil samples right now to understand the geotechnical information to feed into helping us design those structures, those footings, and I'm gonna botch all of the structural design terms here, but just to make sure that we are not in as great of a liquefaction scenario that we are today. So that is definitely, I didn't mean to leave that out. I was kind of more focusing on the climate resiliency, but yes, seismic resiliency is a must-have.
Great. Angela, thank you so much.
Thank you.
And for our CAG members here, we'll be inviting Angela as often as she'll continue to say yes to spend time with this group because this is a significant piece of work, and we want to make sure that you have an opportunity of asking questions as well as posing any recommendations you might have. Now I'm going to turn it over to Kimberly Webb and Salome Shimuku. We are shorter on time than we anticipated, so I will ask both of my colleagues to be brief and brilliant and try to get us through as much material as we can. Fabian and Xander, please just text me if we do have folks sign up for public comment. So go ahead, Kimberly and Salome.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Salome Chimuku. I use she, her pronouns, and I haven't met many of you before, but I work as the community engagement subtask lead over here at the Interstate Bridge Program. I'm just going to peruse through these slides, and hopefully we'll have some chance for you to ask us some questions as well as ask you some questions. But I'm just going to give a brief overview of to help you envision what the public comment period is going to be like once the release of the draft SEIS happens. So as stated earlier, there is going to be 60 days where the public will be weighing in. There will be information provided in many places, but the idea is that this public comment period is not going to be the only place where people can provide public comment or comment to us about the program. As you see multiple times on our schedule, we are always going to be looking for comments. We're always going to be looking for feedback. This is just describing a prescriptive period that is related to our National Environmental Policy Act and our NEPA process, that is, and the draft SEIS. So over the next coming months, we'll provide more information on what is going to be studied to help people prepare for that public comment period. And when you submit public comment, the program will record the comment and provide a response to the comment in the final SEIS. And we're anticipating that to happen in late 2024, early 2025. Next slide. And we went a little bit ahead, skipped one. So I'm going to turn it over to Kimberly Webb here in just a second. There's going to be many ways that people can participate. Essentially, what you're looking at here is that we're going to be having the ability for folks to weigh in, whether it be on our website through the web comment form, emailing their comments, sending a comment through the mail, as in like snail mail, calling the IBR office and leaving a verbal comment, commenting at public meetings and or hearings. We're also going to make sure that folks are aware that we'll provide these various ways of comments to make sure that we can reach as many people as possible. And we will provide information on how folks can provide those comments in different ways. And just so folks are aware, your public comment for this period, it does not have to be in English. We are going to be looking at how do we accommodate folks who speak a variety of languages and nonverbal languages to make sure that we are able to get their comment. And I will pass it over to Kimberly Webb.
Thank you, Salome. I would like to share with you now how we plan on getting the information out more broadly to our community. We are using various tools, and one of the things is old-fashioned advertising. We are building an advertising plan to hit all the typical places where you might see any public engagement opportunities advertised. But we also are focusing places that are going to be seen by our equity priority communities. So we are planning to place advertisements into culturally specific media outlets. And social media will also play a large role in getting the word out to various audiences and age groups through both paid advertisements and organic posts. For multimedia engagement, Our team is in the process of creating storyboards for a series of videos that will answer many of the questions we heard tonight. Some of these questions are the investments proposed by the program and that are being studied in the draft SEIS. We will answer what is an SEIS and why does it matter, and what are the data points we are studying, and what will people expect to see when we can reveal the results? And importantly, how can they provide public comment? Our written engagement tools are the postcards that we will be mailing directly to people within the program area and other areas that have been identified by our community engagement team. We expect to host in-person events, and so we will have visually appealing and well-written display boards so people can digest this information, as well as presentations and fact sheets, which we will use during these public events. We will also have them online, but we could also provide them to individuals or organizations by dropping off literature and other materials that they can share with their communities. And then again, in person, that was mentioned here tonight. And we will continue to have in-person events ahead of and during the SEIS. And so anytime we are directly engaging with the community in person, so briefings and public hearings and neighborhood forums. And in the media, we have relationships already established with journalists in the region. And so we are continuing to proactively reach out to these outlets that have been following this program. And our partners in the media, they are really crucial to helping us get a large audience while also presenting a balanced view of what we're trying to accomplish. Next slide, please. So the content, we've talked a lot about how we will keep people or provide information. So when the 60-day period hits, people will be able to meaningfully participate in the public comment period. So we will take this information that Angela provided tonight and other notable details and present it in an appealing way for various audiences. And as I shared earlier, we will present what types of data points will be presented in the draft SEIS, but not necessarily the results. And we can share this information through the tactics I've described earlier, as well as in-person meetings. And the questions that we get from our audience and from our community and from groups like this will help us create content that is useful to the community and answer the questions that may be burning and that we have not anticipated. So again, and Salome somewhat covered this, we are going to convey to people what they can expect during public comment period, how they can participate, and how they can learn more. And so our outcomes for this is to solicit feedback to help us inform future content and how we can create content in the future and maybe consider approaches to our community engagement strategy. So this is the way of saying we are going to take the feedback we hear based on the materials we provide, learn from it, and improve. So we are always constantly trying to improve how we reach people. And we're at this critical juncture to where we need to better understand the people's needs and how to meet them where they are. And with that, I'll turn it back over to you, Salome.
Hello, everyone. So right here on this slide is a list of all of the different various ways that we're going to be working to inform the public, as well as reach members of the public about the public comment period and what's going to be happening, information about the draft SEIS. So that way, folks, by the time the release comes around, know how to navigate a document of that size, know where to look for information that they want to find, and be able to have as much time as they can with that information so they can provide public comment. As you can see here, there's not a lot of formal requirements for us when it comes to what is expected of us from this process, but we're going above and beyond to reach as many people as possible through the list of different methods of engagement that we'll be doing over the next few months and during the public comment period. And then also you can see here our list of audience members include equity priority communities, residents in the program area, property and business owners, neighborhood associations, current and future travelers over the bridge who drive, use transit, or active transportation, as well as community-based organizations. And although we are many on the staff here at IBR, we do recognize the need to have folks who are knowledgeable also help us reach more people. And so as some of you may remember, we do have a miniature grant program going on currently to help us reach out to more people. And if you go to the next slide, I can cover who some of those folks are. And so this is, again, to know that we don't pretend like we know everyone. And sometimes you need to have other people involved who can reach more people than you can reach on your own. And so we're happy that we're able to partner with these organizations to help us reach more people and reach more of these equity priority communities, especially to help get people prepared for the public comment period. And again, these are just a few of the folks who are going to be working with us directly, but there will be many different groups and organizations that we'll give presentations to and work with in the future. Next slide, please. And so we have a couple of questions here, but I do know that we're tight on time. And so a couple of questions that we wanted to pitch to you all was, how can we share the content of the draft SAIS in a way that helps the community provide feedback? And then the second question is, what additional community engagement would you encourage the program to conduct with the outcome of encouraging active public participation and feedback? I know that with Angelique's section, we got a couple of comments already, but if folks want to add on to it, I am all ears.
Great. I see Martha.
Yeah, so my first question is about one of the slides. You said something about info box, and maybe it's because I'm too old, but I don't know what that is. Could somebody tell me?
Never too old. Never too old. It's just well seasoned. Our info box is our shorthand for our information inbox. So we do have that, and it's currently open right now. And so folks can submit questions to us or comments to us. And then our staff reads over the question and finds the appropriate staff member to answer those questions. And so that info inbox will be still available to folks during that public comment period. If they have like a question of, I want to get my comment to you in this way, what's your physical address? Or, hey, I heard there's a public hearing, could you tell me the dates again? And so it'll be available for folks.
Okay, thank you. And then I have a suggestion. I know you guys are coming to next week to a City of Vancouver West Side something at Lubke Center. And I think that's a great idea, but are you planning to schedule something like that during or soon after the draft SEIS drops, so that you can do a sort of a presentation about a summary of the impact in person to the public who attend this at the library or at a community center or something like that?
Yeah, so I'll answer it in two ways. So one, we do presentations to folks to help prepare them for the public comment period, and we're going to continue doing that. And so we are actively emailing different groups that we're aware of and asking if we could come and give a presentation, and asking for groups that to just email us directly to ask for a presentation. And so trying to reach as many people as we can. And then also during the public comment period, we'll still be doing that sort of work, because we do understand that there might be people that have more technical questions that are just kind of like, where do I find this, or how do I read that, before they give their public comment. And so we want to make sure that we're available to answer those technical questions, along with helping people get to the the different channels to provide their official public comment.
Great. We'll have Sam.
Thank you very much. This is a great plan. I really appreciate that. I just want to echo what Tom had said earlier. We're just massively dumping data. So instead of looking at this as how to inform the public as quickly and as massively as we can, all within the 60-day period, what I like to suggest is that it be more of a marketing campaign where we look at for engagement, for click rate, for things that indicate that we're not just massively dumping stuff, but we are actually engaging people. And I know you used the word engagement here, but it'd be great if we could know what the response rate has been, or people, eyeballs have been, and do people actually read this stuff, or is it just, we've done our job, we dumped all this out there and we're good.
That's a great feedback, Sam. I will take the physical and talking to people kind of stuff, and I'll leave Kimberly to answer your question when it comes to the digital stuff. So with the work that I'm doing right now with my team, we are working to do presentations and listening sessions, especially to ask people the question of what information that we gave to them really helped in their understanding, and also how this can be made available in a culturally appropriate way, given that different communities learn in different ways. And so we are going to be working with our miniature grant cohort, and that work has actually started now. And so we are reaching to people to give them similar information to what we gave you all today, to help people break down and understand what to expect in this document, and help us also understand what more they could need to be able to feel like they can give some meaningful feedback by their standards. Because obviously people have different definitions of what meaningful is for them versus for us. And so we want to make sure that we're giving them information that they need to be able to feel good about the comment that they're going to give. And then I'll pass to Kimberly Webb to talk about how we track that from a digital standpoint.
Yeah, thank you for the question, and I'm excited to answer it. And I appreciate you bringing it up, because we do have a communications plan that has measurable objectives. I do not have them in front of me at this moment. However, we will be able to rate our success in achieving those measurable objectives. And we will look forward to sharing them with you after the public comment period, and we had an opportunity to compile the data.
Thank you so much. I love it. Great answers.
I do want to take just a moment to remind folks, all of the work that we have been doing this summer at fairs and festivals, the presentations that I talked about earlier, this is all a part of that campaign to get people up to speed on what they need to know about this project. There's going to be a lot of information and data out there, and we're not expecting folks to dive into every detail, but we know that, once again, folks are going to be wanting to know. So this is a continual campaign to get people up to speed and know how, when, and not miss this time period. So
thank you. That's great.
Great. Well, thank you, Salome and Kimberly.
You got a question?
Oh, I
from
see
Tom.
Tom. Did not see you, Tom. Go ahead, Tom.
Okay, very quickly. Will the questions and comments that come back from the public be made publicly available, compiled in real time, so that we can see where the questions and concerns concentrate, kind of as the process moves forward?
I can take that one if you'd like, or we will be, we're expecting thousands of comments just based on prior input from the community. We will be doing our best to catalog all those comments and be able to early summarize common themes. Ultimately, when the final supplemental EIS is published, it will have an appendix that is responses to those public comments. in the interim between the public comment period closing and the publication of the final supplemental EIS, I'm sure you will see some summaries, including some of the statistics that Kimberly mentioned and some of the themes that were heard in the outreach activities that Salome mentioned. We'll be summarizing those and reporting out on them as soon as we can.
Yeah, I'm hoping that some of that can happen during the comment period itself, so that we can kind of follow the conversation and concentrate on the issues that arise during the 60-day period.
Yeah, I can't speak to that. Just in my experience, the bulk of the comments come in near the end of the comment period. And so I don't know how representative it will be to report out on early information. But I appreciate the comment and something that we can take into consideration as we continue to advance our plan for the public response.
And one thing this is a process that we are operating, but it is a federally owned process, and we don't have the ability to change the fundamentals of their process. But we'll ask those questions. We'll ask them of our federal partners and see what is allowed and what we physically can get done during that time. It's going to be a tremendously busy time period for our team, cataloging and taking those things into account. We expect hundreds of people asking questions at the public hearing, and all of those questions, once again, will have to be cataloged and eventually provided a written response to in the final document. So this is quite an undertaking, but we will see what flexibility we have to do some unique things to help satisfy the need for information on this program.
Great, and sorry to interject, but we are out of time on this. If we can get the slides populated so we can let our public know how they might weigh in here. Next slide, please. Just a reminder, if you'd like to make a verbal comment, you may dial 646-931-3860 or 408-638-0968. You want to include the meeting ID, which is 986-0940-5983, as well as a passcode 701-376. You'll want to dial *9 to raise your hand. I'll call on participants to provide comment. You'll want to also be reminded to dial *6 to unmute yourself. Please provide your name and affiliation. Next slide, please. We're also receiving comments via written text, info@interstatebridge.org. You'll want to include CAG Public Comment in the subject line. You can also leave a message at 360-859-0494 for Washingtonians, 503-897-9218 for Oregonians, or the toll-free number 1-888-503-6735. Please state CAG Public Comment in your message. Written comments need to explicitly say CAG Public Comment in the subject line or the body of the message for them to be identified and distributed to CAG members. All written comments must be received prior to 48 hours in advance of each upcoming meeting in order to be distributed to advisory group members. Comments received after that point will be distributed to the members in advance of their next meeting. Next slide, please. That covers our meeting today. I'm going to ask Zender or Fabian, do we have any members of the public wishing to address CAG?
None at this time.
Okay, with that, I'm going to see if either Lynn or Ed or both, if you have any last minute comments you'd like to leave with our CAG colleagues.
No, I would like to just thank everyone for their active participation, and also suggest that if you're one that hasn't spoken, give some thought to what is it that you would like to engage on, and so that we get kind of viewpoints from everyone, not just a few of us. But I also think I would recommend that each of us look at the various lists that we might distribute information and make sure that you have those kind of updated and accessible, because I do think we can actively promote communication in a more pointed way than we could just with general outreach. So it's always good to get a message more than once. Ed, do you have anything that you'd like to add?
No, just except for that this meeting has given me about 50 or 60 additional ideas about things that I think we can do, but I'll leave that for another day. But really, this was very, very good, and yeah, it's very hopeful. So thank you so very, very much for all your work today. Appreciate it.
Administrator Johnson, would you like to offer any closing remarks?
Well, I'd just like to echo Ed and Lynn's thanks for the great attention and participation that we are seeing. This is a long slog, and you guys have been here right with us, and you are giving us incredible feedback, incredible ideas that we're going to act on. So thank you. And I hope everyone has a great evening and a great weekend. And thank you to, as this weekend is Veterans Day, for all of those who have served. Thank you.
Just a note before everyone logs off, our next meeting is scheduled to be December 14th, 4 to 6 p.m., where we will have an opportunity of participating in community benefits visioning. Then we'll have a meeting in January. Of course, that seems so far from now, where we anticipate conversations relative to design videos as well as other updates. So thank you all. Appreciate your participation, and we will see you all soon.